There you go.
That's it. Well, welcome to class. This is our session on chapter 5 of the positivity bias, talking about bringing the close closer. And so what I want to talk about, I want to actually share a story that's not in the book, giving a perspective. So here's the story. The story goes that there was a crown prince who became not well and developed all kinds of illness, and they were trying to revive him, and they called doctors from all over the kingdom, and each of the different doctors came, and they tried this and they tried that, and they poked him here and they poked him there, and they tried this and that, and no matter what they tried, it just wasn't working. It just wasn't working. And they finally end up with a doctor who comes from the farthest ends of the kingdom nobody's ever heard of before. And his suggestion was, maybe if you'll take the crown jewel, the emerald that is the beauty of the crown, and you'll pulverize it and add water and give it to the prince, that may revive him. So the king spoke to his advisors, and of course, anything goes to Congress, that's going to take time, right? So they're debating back and forth and back and forth. In the meantime, the prince develops lockjaw. So now it's not only a question of will it revive him, but now it's a question, will it even get in, right? And the advisor said, it's a question on top of another question, and we're going to say no. And the king says, this is my son, crush the emerald. So they crush the emerald, they pulverize it, and they add water, and they pour it over the prince's mouth in the hope that it will get in the hope that it will revive him. And that's the story. Now, the next question, of course, is like, well, what happened? What happened, right? This is part of the story, right? So we are the story. We are the story. So this is what the story is about. If you look back over the Jewish history, there was a time a couple hundred years ago when the Jewish people were literally shell-shocked from the Chaplaincy massacres, where over 100,000 Jews were dead across the Ukrainian landscape. And in case that wasn't bad enough, there came another guy, Shabtai Tzvi, who called himself a Messiah. Everyone got all feverishly, all excited about it, and thought this was the end of it all. And then he converted to Islam when he was told, convert or die to Islam. And so, then there was that was even worse, right? So the Jewish people were comatose. It was a disastrous situation. And the divide between the Jewish people had become those who learn and understand Torah are scholars, and these are the Jews, and the rest of you, you're nothing. And the split between the Jewish people was getting just worse and worse and worse. On this scene came the Baal Shem Tov, the founder of the Hasidic movement. The Baal Shem Tov came, and he did something very interesting. He took the greatest secrets of the Torah, the mystical teachings of the Torah, the Kabbalah of Torah, and he broke it down into stories, parables, gentle insights, kind of like the emerald, the crown jewel, which has been pulverized and mixed with water and becomes palatable to the prince, right? So these were the ways of teaching Torah and teaching the secrets of Torah, the greatest mystical piece of Torah, but making it palatable to to everyone. And so the same with the story that I just told, right? This story is a parable for what was going on for the Jewish people in Tachvatat, those Jewish years, right? And through the work of the Baal Shem Tov, reaching out to the uneducated, the unlearned, and traveling all around, he was able to, in a sense, revive the Jewish people and start a mass revival of Jewish following in the times of the Baal Shem Tov. Now, of course, since that time, we've suffered the Holocaust, and we've suffered the uneducated American scene, where people coming from Europe would say even the rocks in America are treif. Even the rocks aren't kosher. To that level, it had stepped away, and it was in this scene in the 1950s that the Lubavitcher Rebbe, in 1951, the Rebbe took on the mantle of leadership of Chabad, and you saw the huge divide in the Jewish people once again. There's the religious fanatics, and there's everybody else. And the Jewish integration into, or the Jews becoming like everyone else, losing their Judaism, marrying out of the faith, and all the things that came to since water down the Orthodox Judaism that we had known in the past. So this was seen as a huge divide. The Rebbe comes into this huge socio-spiritual chasm between people, and he seeks to restore purpose and passion and cohesion and fragmentation. It says Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, the previous former chief rabbi of the British Commonwealth, referred to the Rebbe's efforts as to reach out to every single Jew in love the way we were hunted down in hate. That same passion, that same open-armed approach, and that it was not relevant what their background, what their level of education, what their level of observance. That's not even the point. Not even the point. Judaism is not so much a religion, it's family. It's just family. And as a member of a family, you can't opt out. It's irrevocable. You are part of the family, like it or not. There was a psychology book called I forget the name of the book, but it was about being born into the family. I didn't choose. Oh, it was a Lucy Brown. I didn't choose to be born in this family. Using the Peanuts characters, right? Mm-hmm. So, I mean, it is unfortunate when family members are estranged from the family, but they're still family members. Everyone gets a seat at the table. Even the wicked son sitting at the table at Passover Seder is still at the table. My favorite. Right? It's family. Jeff, were you saying?
My favorite part. I always like to read it.
So the bottom line is that the Jewish soul is essentially pure and incorruptible, period. That's it. We're family members. It has to do with the soul, and there is no opting out. Now the question becomes, what are we focusing on? What are we looking at? How do we get distracted by everything else, or do we focus on the godliness of the Jewish soul and what it can accomplish? There was a story about, and he brings up a story here where there was a college student, and the Rebbe asked, what is he studying? And he says he's getting a master's degree in education. And the Rebbe mentioned, I also attended university years ago. He went to Sorbonne, and also to in Germany he went. And the young man said, so what did you study? Theology? And the Rebbe answered, electrical engineering. And in fact, the Rebbe served at the Brooklyn Navy Yard as an electrical engineer on nuclear subs back in that era, right?
Yeah, it doesn't say that in the book, though. I remember.
No, it doesn't.
Learning about that, yeah.
Yeah. And so the Rebbe then explains, you see, every human being has a soul, a divine spark that burns inside them. And sometimes a person moves away from their inner light. It might even seem that the light of their soul has been snuffed out. But the soul is like a pilot light. It never goes out completely. And that is my goal, is to illuminate Jewish life through the soul by brightening and fanning the flame till it shines bright again. So we're basically saying, again, it's family. Everyone has it. It's just a matter of warming that up, brightening that up. And again, he uses the example in the next story about, we can them explaining that we can understand the Baal Shem Tov through the sense of an electrical powerhouse. There's an electrical power plant. It's tied through different channels to an electric lamp through the wiring. Every Jew, without exception, is connected with the powerhouse, and it's just a matter of finding the switch. What is it that's going to switch on or ignite or enlighten every different Jew's neshama? Everybody's different. Everybody's different. Some people are going to be excited about one mitzvah. Others are going to be excited about a different mitzvah. Some will be excited about learning Torah. Some will be excited about doing things. Everybody's different, right? But the goal is to find what's the thing that moves you most, to draws you most. And I remember being in rabbinical college and in Tiferes Bachurim in Morristown, which is all for young adults coming to learn Torah for the first time. So I was reviewing my Aleph base and starting to read all over again because it has pretty much been forgotten since Bar Mitzvah. And so I'm 20 years old and I'm starting to learn Aleph base over again. And there are a lot of guys that were really passionate about the learning. But someone asked me, what brought me into Chabad Hasidus and the Orthodox Jewish lifestyle? And I remembered, for me, there were two parts to it. Always wanted a big family. Always wanted a big family. In fact, I even said back then, I want a baseball team full, right? Now, I didn't play baseball, so I had no idea what that actually meant. It turns out we are blessed with 9 kids. But at that time, I had no idea. I just wanted a whole team, right? So that was number one. And when I saw that within the Hasidic community, that definitely drew me in. But the second part is, there wasn't anything I was hearing or learning that wasn't already a part of who I am. Borrowing from John Denver, it was like coming home from a place I'd never been before. Coming home to a place I'd never been before. Everything about Hasidus and the Hasidic lifestyle was like resonating. So that's what it was for me. I'm not a book learner. I'm not, I don't have a great Talmud Chacham head to learn Gemara and everything else. I struggled to get through Gemara, that which I did learn. And even when I first started when I moved out to 1990 to Sydney, Australia to start teaching, I was going to be teaching 6th grade boys. I'd only taught 1st grade before then. Now I'm teaching 6th grade boys. I literally had to have a tutor to prepare me for class each day to stay one step ahead of the 6th grade boys. I started my rabbinical career teaching 1st graders. I moved up to 6th graders in Sydney. By the time we got to Worcester, I was teaching not only 8th grade boys, but I was also working at the campus, college campus, Clark University and Worcester Polytech. And then now I find myself, I'm working with seniors, and I find it exciting to find that this is a running joke, but they used to say, it's not rocket science or it's not brain surgery, right? Well, we've got a rocket scientist in the classroom right now. and I've got a neurosurgeon that I teach with as well. So I was like, wait a second, So over the years, I've worked my way up, right? But the beautiful part is that at each stage, I'm forced to think deeper and learn deeper because the people I'm learning with. So 40 years ago, it was 6-year-olds. I could manage that, but over time, so it's kind of like God said, okay, Grossman, I know you don't have the Zetz place to sit in yeshiva and really learn properly, but we're going to get you there. We're going to find a way to make sure you actually learn, right? So this idea then is that what what is it that motivates each person to come back and learn Torah and dive in and get the wisdom and be a part of the heritage that we own, because it's ours. We own it. It's a family thing. It's a family heirloom. We own Judaism. It's a part of your heritage. It's who you are, and it's a matter of, are you going to crack the book and know what that really that's what that's a part of, right? So finding the switch, and of course, in the other example he gives is the Geology 101 class, where Jewish people are like the earth, which contains nature's hidden treasures beneath it, right? And so some people will dig, and he gives other examples of what others have find as they try and dig into the human psyche. But when a Rebbe digs, what does he find? Gold, silver, diamonds. He's always looking for the beauty, the greatness, the precious gem that lies within every single Jew. So there's no such thing as a bad Jew. The question has become, what are you focusing on? And are you seeing the goodness that is inherently there? An example he gives on here is you're not as secular as you think. You have an ancient tradition and an indomitable point of infinite holiness within you that yearns to serve, to sing, and to soar. So it's a matter just of switching on that light, of finding how to find that expression, right? It talks here about all a person needs is a catalyst that would initiate the removal of whatever has been covering up that which already exists in the inner reaches of his soul, right? It's just a matter of uncovering. We talked about before that, someone had made a comparison of Jews are like the letters on a Torah scroll, and the Rebbe said, no, it's engraved. It's engraved in granite. What's the difference? You can wipe off or erase something in parchment and ink, but something which is engraved, if it's covered over, you just need to brush it off and wash it out and get the schmutz out, and the rest of it is clearly there. You already belong. You're already holy. You are already loved. Now you have to turn around and share that with others. I think we may have discussed this story in previous time before, but George Rohr is a very successful businessman, and he has been a huge supporter of Chabad throughout the world. I remember one time a rabbi was meeting with George Rohr, and he was wearing essentially a suit that any one of us might wear. And the rabbi asked him, why aren't you wearing, and he mentioned some fancy brand out of, France or something, and costing, huge amounts of money. And George Rohr's response to the rabbi was, do you want me to spend $10,000 on the suit or give it to you? Where is it going to do more good? You tell me. So he put the rabbi in his place, right? But he was talking to the Rebbe at some point about sharing Rosh Hashanah services with 130 Jews who had no Jewish background. And the Rebbe said, no background? No Jewish background? He said, no Jewish background. They most definitely have a Jewish background. They're the children of Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. They certainly have a Jewish background. Every Jew is an illustrious child of our holy patriarchs and matriarchs, and are with equal access to spiritual inheritance that was bequeathed to them as well. There's a Hasidic singer, Avram Fried, and he was up in the Catskills. There were some other Hasidim there that are not Lubavitch and don't have the same outlook as Lubavitch. They tend to be much more insular and protective of their society, whereas Chabad is outward projected for every Jew. And Avram Fried had stopped at a gas station, and at the gas station he met this guy. A guy that was working at the station happens to be Jewish. Avram steps out of his car and gets out his tefillin, and he's starting to put on tefillin with this gas station attendant up in the Catskills. And these other Hasidim turn to Avram in Yiddish, and they speak to him in Yiddish, so the other guy won't understand. He said, what are you doing wasting your time with this, grub, this lowlife, right? And Avremel turns to them And he says, do you know who this is? This is the great grandson. And he named some Hasidic Rebbe from Europe, right? This is the great grandson of such and such a Rebbe. And they go, oh, yo, Yakala Kavod, good for you. That's brilliant. Wow. And they walk and they leave and they mace. And Avremel says to himself, okay, maybe not that Rebbe, but Avram Yitzchak and Yaakov for sure. I mean, he's got a Yerusha. He's got an inheritance. He's got a holy ancestors. What are you talking about? But he said it in a frame that they could appreciate. But again, that's the point, right? You meet somebody, and the fact that they have a godly soul, that they're coming from a Jewish ancestry, they're a holy people, whatever's covering over, whatever you're seeing, that's not who that is. There's something much, much deeper, much greater, much more powerful. And don't be fooled by the external aspects that you see. Then there's the story of Reb Monya. Reb Monya was a Chabad chassid with a very successful diamond business. He was a merchant, and years ago, he was visiting the Sholem Ber, the fifth Lubavitch Rebbe, and at a Fabringen, the Rebbe was talking about the greatness of simple people. Simple people who are sitting and they can barely read Aleph Beis, but they spend half a day sitting and saying Psalms, Tehillim, and the greatness of these simple people. And so later, when Reb Monya had a time to speak with the Rebbe privately in a private interview, so he shared with the Reb Shalom Dovber, he shared with the Rebbe that his discomfort with the Rebbe giving so much respect and admiration for simple people. Like, what's with that? And the Rebbe changed the conversation over a little bit and said, tell me how your business is going and whatever. And he said, you have any diamonds with you? He said, oh, yeah. And he proudly pulls out a little pouch and he puts out a black felt cloth and he puts some diamonds out on the Rebbe's table and he shows this one, this, and this one, that. Oh, this one has, oh, right. And the Rebbe's going, yeah, nice. Rebbe, you don't understand. You have to have an eye for this. You have to be an expert to see the different facets of what makes a diamond so precious. And the Rebbe said, same with the Jew. You have to have an eye to know what's truly precious. So he explained in this guy's language, just like Avremel Fried explained about, the guy at the gas station he's putting on tefillin with. You have to explain in their language. You have to be able to see the preciousness, the beauty, the greatness within every individual and be able to bring it out. You have to mine for it. You have to dig for it. Sometimes some people take more digging. Some people, a little more work has to go into it, right? The time of this recording, I'm here in North Dakota, where my son is the Chabad rabbi in North Dakota. And we just celebrated the bris, the circumcision of another grandson. And people came from all around the state to celebrate with him.
Yeah, where did you find a boil in North Dakota?
We flew one up from Chicago, and he actually made it back the earlier flight flight that evening. We also had another moil that actually drove down from Winnipeg, who's a family friend.
Okay.
So he was also here.
I was just curious.
But the people that came, if you were an outsider walking in and looking at the crowd that was there, you'd look and say, like what do any of these people have in common? The way they're dressed and each one different from the other, right? But it was all family. They're all Jews. They all came. They were here. They came to celebrate another family member. So it was a beautiful thing. But you have to be able to have an eye to see the beauty within each one of them. Absolutely marvelous. Back in the 1990s, the Rebbe started a very fascinating activity. we're told that the mitzvah of tzedakah will bring the Mashiach, will bring the Geula. So how do you increase in tzedakah? Well, you can give more, or you can give more frequently, more in amount or more in frequency. But the Rebbe added a whole new dimension. Usually it's one person giving and one person receiving. The Rebbe added a whole new dimension to it, where I'm going to give you $1. You now give that dollar to the charity of your choice. And now we have 3 people involved in the mitzvah of tzedakah. And of course, as I've said before, most people received $1 from the Rebbe. They didn't exchange, they kept the one the Rebbe gave them because it came from his holy hand. But they would exchange it with at least another $1. But whoever did $1 for $1, like they always would be a 5 or a 10 or a 20 or 100, they always redeemed it for much more than what they got. But the Rebbe's dollar was precious, and they would keep it, right? Someone came to receive $1 from the Rebbe with the blessings that comes with it, and was waiting for hours and hours online. By the time she gets to the Rebbe, she said, "Rebbe, I've been standing here for an hour or plus, and I'm exhausted. You've been standing here for hours and hours. How do you not get tired?" And the Rebbe smiled and says, "When you're counting diamonds, you don't get tired." Now, obviously, you're counting diamonds, and the value of each diamond is tremendous, right? But the Rebbe is looking at every Jew as more precious than a diamond. And so that 5 to 10 second meeting with everyone passing through to collect $1 was precious in and of itself, to meet and greet each of these holy Jewish people. Then there's a story of Reb Meir, Yisrael Meir Lau, the former chief rabbi of Israel, a Holocaust survivor himself. He was one of the youngest survivors from the Holocaust. And he was mentioning that he was very actively involved in what we call in Hebrew, Kiruv Rechokim, to bring close those who are distant. And the Rebbe corrected him, saying, "Who's to say that someone's distant? How can we determine who's close and who's far? Every single Jew is close to God. So how can we make that statement?" So bring closer those who are close. How do we share the inheritance with those who own it, so they can fully appreciate everything which is already theirs? We say that kulam tzadikim, all of your people are righteous, all of your holy people are righteous. Every single Jew. You look at some shlemazel, and that comes in, and you think, like, how do you say that this person is a holy person? So look deeper. If you don't see it at first, dig deeper, and you may find an absolute diamond.
So
A diamond in the rough.
Is that where that know who before you stand comes in?
That also comes in, but the idea of know who stands before you, that's what's written oftentimes on top of on the Iron Kodesh, right? To know who you're standing before, right? That's more about helping to a person to understand that God is watching. There's an eye that sees, and an ear that hears, an eye that sees, an ear that hears, and everything is recorded. If you knew that, your behavior would change, which we see all the time, because when someone checks to see if there's cameras in the room, their mind is elsewhere.
Good point.
Right? So if you know that there's a God that sees and an ear, God is watching and he's listening and everything's recorded, you behave differently, right? So that's a means by which we help someone step up to the plate to be a better person. There's a story about someone who was having trouble with his Yetzer Hara and a challenge with his evil inclination. And what bothered him most was his ego. His ego was disturbed by that behavior. So the ego is a problem of its own, right? the Rebbe's response to him was, so use your ego to tame the animal inclination. A person like me, how could I even think of doing such a thing like that? Right? And so use your own ego to tame the evil inclination, because you're better than that. You're better than that. And you know you're better than that. I've used that with some teenagers periodically, and it's been fascinating to watch the result, because when you tell it, someone in the teenage years, and you tell them, like, you don't have, instead of reprimanding, that was stupid. That was a stupid decision, right? If you say, I know you, you're better than that, then it's true, by the way. It's 100% true. We know you're better than that. But you fell, foolish folly, and you haven't had the life's consequences as much as some of the older folks have. So you make those mistakes. But if you hear from someone that I know you and you're greater than that, then you rise up to the occasion for all of us. So the question tonight for everybody, to share an example from your experience of someone you met that you didn't think highly of to begin with, but as you got to know them and dig a little deeper, you found a hidden gem. And I'm not talking about just a godly soul, because this is true of anyone. This is not just Jews. Every single person is created in the image of God. Who is it that you got to know a little bit better, and there was a real gem? So I'll start off the story with, I was teaching in Sydney, Australia. And I was teaching sixth grade, but there was a fifth grade class that had so many challenges that the teacher would often call in sick. And the principal would have me cover both classes by going back and forth between them, juggling the English schedule and the Judaic schedules. So I started teaching, that class, and subbing for that class, and then teaching my class, etc. And at some point it became so frequent, I told him, I said, listen, I'm not interested in subbing anymore. I'll take both classes outright, but I'm not interested in subbing. And he said, they're yours. So there was a kid in fifth grade who, he was in fifth grade, but he'd only been in Australia for a year. He had gotten out of, his family had been able to leave Russia, and they escaped Russia. They came to Australia. They settled in Sydney, and his parents didn't speak any English at all. He was doing fine because he'd been there for a couple of years and he learned quickly, but trying to catch up on all the Judaica stuff that he missed since he was, he'd come in fourth grade and did not have all the background. So he got easily bored in class, and he did what most of us do when we're bored in class. You create some excitement. So I had been warned about him. I knew him. We finished off the fifth grade year. During summer camp, he came to camp. And while we were at summer camp, we did an overnight on the beach. And while we're out at the beach, Mordechai comes up to me and he says, I'm a good swimmer. I want to go out past the breakers. Can I go out past the breakers? So my first instinct, of course, is no, right? But this kid's a strong kid. I mean, he physically was a strong kid. And I said, my mind was more about, how can I make sure this kid has a good time? How do I help him shine? So I said, I'll take you. I'm a strong swimmer. I was a lifeguard for years, scuba diver. I said, yeah, let's go. We're going. And so we swim out together. We get out to the, where the breakers are, where the reason when you get breakers coming in from waves is because there's a sandbar there. and the waves break over the sandbar. So we get out to the sandbar, and then we go out past the sandbar. And he's loving this. It's great. And then he's getting a bit tired. So we go back to the sandbar. I can stand. He can't. I can stand. So he's hanging on to me to get a rest before we start heading back in. In the meantime, we start doing some games like, dive down and, can you see on the bottom? He said, yeah, I can see the bottom. I said, dive down and bring up some sand. So guys down. So we started playing some games, there at the breakers. 5-10 minutes out there, and he's relaxing and catching his wind and playing some games, and then we swim back in. I never had problems with him in class. We had formed a relationship. He knew I cared about him as an individual, and my motto in life is nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care. He got it. And he never had any trouble in my class at all. And I'll say, may Mordechai may his neshama, his soul, rest in Gan Eden and have a lift to Gan Eden, a brightly heavenly acquirement. He did not make it through his teenage years. When I was back in the United States, I found out that he had some other challenges that came along the way, and he never finished high school. So it pains me because as much as everybody else in school called him a troublemaker, I love this guy. And we were good buddies. And it pains me to know that he didn't make it through teenage years. But I saw the diamond. I got to know the gold underneath. They're all there. So let me hear one of your stories. Doesn't have to be as dramatic. Go ahead, Stan. Unmute.
Hey, I'll answer the question, but it don't have a story. But I think it gets to the same point you're trying to make, since all of us have got some military experience. What I related to was pretty much everybody who ever worked for me in the military. They were kind of assigned to me. I didn't really hire them all. And when they came in, I really didn't know what they had. But as I got to know each and every one of them, you could see that little where their spark was. So over the course of career, I guess, your principle kind of repeated itself over and over again.
One after another.
Not really a story, but it's just how I relate to what you
absolutely asked. Absolutely, yeah. And I'm sure, and you and I've had some time together over the last couple of years, so I can say with clarity, I'm guarantee that your interactions with them help to reveal them, because sometimes people don't know themselves how good they are, but with the right boss, right, to bring out, you saw the goodness, you brought that out in them, and you buffed that diamond to shine. And so I think that's a brilliant piece of thing. That's a perfect example of what we're talking about. Thank you.
I can go.
Go ahead, Selena, jump in.
In the past, I was a teacher, and one of my years, I had a gifted fourth grade class, and one of my students, one of the young girls in the class, she was very smart, but she was from a broken family, and we developed a rapport. The other kids in the class really didn't have much to do with her, but she always wanted to try to do her best so that I would give her the attention, and she was trying to please me, I think, kind of like a surrogate mother.
Yeah.
But she really did excel, and the other kids were kind of surprised, and she took off like wildfire. But, the relationship was a good one.
Right.
And
it starts with that relationship.
Yes. Even after I went to a different teaching job, she was keeping in contact with me, writing me letters.
Quite possibly you were the lifeline for her. Absolutely. Yeah. And I always wonder sometimes if, you know, when a person is, do they realize and understand how much you actually meant for them cognitively? Do they understand what happened there and how much you literally changed the trajectory of that life?
And on the other side of the coin, when I was in 8th grade, I had a teacher who was a father of 8 children. And it didn't matter what subject he taught and how difficult he was, I was getting straight A's in his class. So that's the other side of the coin,
He was
because
inspiring.
he was very inspiring, and some of the other kids in the class didn't understand how he could manage to teach us, but I got everything.
Sweet. Yes, absolutely. The other side of the coin is that's a teacher that inspires. Absolutely. Okay, Eliran, I don't take hands, so you just speak up.
I'm being bullied.
You're being
Of
honored with an opportunity.
course.
Well,
Actually,
the funny part is that the reason I said we're not calling on hands. My cursor was over your picture and it showed up as a hand. I thought you were raising your hand. I said, we're not
I
taking
know.
hands here. Then I moved the cursor and realized that was all right. Well, obviously God meant you to talk. You're up.
All right, all right. I actually do have a good case for this. Is when I was in high school, I knew a lot of the people who were really good at hacking into stuff, but had terrible grades, could not keep up with, didn't have too many friends, and uh, I would spend a lot of time helping them out with that, their grades, whatnot. But at that point, I said, okay, there's a lot of people that they're really good at something that isn't really appreciated at the school. Nobody wants to be known for being able to hack into stuff, being able to turn off the school's network for a few weeks. But maybe we can do something with this. So at that point, that's when I was working with the cybersecurity teacher, and we started the cybersecurity club. And I think at that point, that's when all of them progress. They all turn to a whole different people. When you have somebody who went from being able to show you how to get onto how to buy drugs on a school computer to now being able to show you how to secure a multi-layer network. It's just, I think that was incredible. And then being able to connect with each other and showing that they can put their skills to good use, I think that's what helped them move toward a better version of themselves. And even now, them going to college, really good colleges, and being able to use what they've learned to not only develop themselves, but even some of them are now teaching other people or working in bigger companies to help in other ways. But I think just being able to show them that there are other uses for their skills beyond just known as the weird kid or the hacker kid.
The nerds that now run the world, right?
And
But
I
yeah,
think,
so bless
yeah,
you
I
for
think,
being able to shine a light on that and in a good light. You know, the same talents, but put it in a good sense. So God bless you for that. Absolutely, Selena.
I think what Eliran is alluding to, and I say this in every job I've ever been in, is if you're not strong in something and someone else is strong in something, you complement each other and you turn it into something good, because the weakest link is there's how does the saying go? The strongest link is the weakest link.
The strength
How
of the
does
chain is limited to the weakest link.
Right. So you complement each other. So not everybody is strong in something. And if you're weak and someone is better in that, you get together, you can really make
Absolutely.
a great accomplishment. So that's positive.
Beautiful. Beautiful example. Absolutely. Stan, you look like you want to talk. I mean, Ron, you look like you want to talk.
Well, I was thinking about something. Quite a few years ago, when this movement was popular, that I can't remember, it was 3 words, one of which was divest. You remember what the other two were?
BDS, yeah.
Yeah. Well, my wife and I became co-chairs of the Social Action Committee at our synagogue. And I was warned about this one person on the committee who, quote, was a real troublemaker. And he had formed his own little subcommittee to go after these divestment people. And he was writing letters to various churches, telling them in no uncertain terms what they should and should not be doing. And as chairman of the committee, these letters had to go through me. And I just thought they were horribly inflammatory. He was a lawyer. He was writing as a lawyer. And I just took his letters and all these very harsh statements I softened and sent them back to him, expecting to catch hell. And every time he said, thank you, he let him go. And this so-called troublemaker and I became very good friends, and we still are.
Beautiful. Yeah, beautiful. Bringing out that polishing the diamond and finding the good qualities within each one and bringing those out. Teamwork, like Selena was talking about, beautiful, beautiful. Okay, Judy.
We have a nurse at a place where I work who is very bright and doesn't have any filters. So anything she thinks, she says, which fortunately she doesn't speak in front of most of the patients because she's afraid of them. And one of the reasons she's afraid of them is that they hear her talking. They hear the tone of voice that she's using with other staff members. They don't hear the words, but they hear the tone of voice. And that makes them react in negative ways. So she has been asking me why everybody hates her. And it's a legitimate question because people do have negative responses to the way she words things. But what she's telling people always is the truth, and a needed truth, something that is lacking in what is going on that they should be doing to make sure everybody is safe and invested in their treatment. So we've had some long talks. And there have been many times recently when she has said, okay, this is what I want to say. Will you say it for me? And I say, and I've been saying, I will tell you what I would say, but you have to put it in your own vernacular. And it takes usually 4 or 5 tries before she gets it to the point where she's not going to have somebody screaming at her. But she is progressing, and now they have asked her to be a supervisor.
Oh.
And so last Sunday when we worked together, she said, I don't know if I should take this job. I already have many enemies, and I'm just beginning now to have a few that don't scream at me when I talk to them. What if I am responsible for the behavior of everybody in the shift, and I have to go from one person to another telling them what they're doing wrong? So
Yeah, go ahead.
So the assignment I gave her was to think of ways that she can respond to negative things. Think of any negative thing that anybody's doing and write 5 responses to them. And then let me see them. And So tonight, I get to see her responses.
Maybe she should tell everybody what they're doing positive instead of negative.
We tried that already. That was my first
Well,
step.
yeah, but it's
That's
a
a
very
quiet day.
challenging thing in leadership roles
It
to
is.
be given to give in a harsh message in
Uh-huh.
a pleasant way.
Right.
And you are responsible for
Yes.
how they perform. So, how do you tell a person that you're being a jerk?
Yeah. Or that you're doing something that's potentially illegal.
Right. Right. So yeah.
Or that's
So
going to
it's-
get you killed because somebody's going to misunderstand it. Or that
Right.
you're not watching when this person comes by and this person is here for homicidal tendencies. And you got to know what he's doing at every minute. You can't turn your back on him.
Right. Right. So very important messages, very important
Yeah.
information, how to do it
Mhm.
in a way that it can be accepted.
Right.
Very, very challenging.
Mm-hmm.
And
We're making progress, I think.
well, and God has blessed her with a friend like you to help her figure these pieces out. And Lord knows you've had practice with Rudy. So I mean, this is
Why should I resemble that remark?
Rudy's not the one that gives me the challenges at home, but I do have challenges.
yeah, yeah. Well, yeah. So I think that's a marvelous example because truth is not easy always to accept.
No.
And how do you communicate? One of the things I talk about with my cadets is you're not responsible just for what you say. You're
Mhm.
responsible for what was perceived.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Which comes from how you say it.
So that changes the game. And I
Mhm.
keep repeating to my cadets to say, hey, have you checked in to find out what message was actually received? I know what you said,
Mhm.
but did you check in with what was actually heard?
Mhm.
Because they can be vastly different.
It's more what you didn't say.
Yeah. All right. Exactly. Yeah.
Yes.
So it's a very, very challenging arena. And it's in arenas like those where it's great to have someone like you to, bounce ideas off of and check in with things. There was a colonel from Southcom who spoke at an Olive dinner event for all the chaplains. And one of the things he talks about is, he was talking to all chaplains from all the branches, right? And he's talking to us and he's saying, part of your job is to tame and filter the commander. And then he gave me then he shared with us 3 examples of where he was about to really do something really bad and stupid, somewhat necessary, but because he had a chaplain who was close to him, he was able to bounce off the chaplain. The chaplain gave him a reframing, just like you did, right? And potentially save him embarrassment, but actually get the job done. And so that was part of a chaplain's job as well, to be
But
that filter.
it's not only verbal when you speak, it's
Exactly.
body language too, because you could be saying something positive, but your expressions are saying something different.
And if you're working in a mental hospital, that's
Yeah.
very important.
Because I've had
Right.
that experience when I was working in the hospital as well.
Mhm.
And you have to be very, very careful.
Judy, that brings me
Well-
back to the parking lot of St. Peter's.
Yes. Yes.
So what's the story there? Come on, Rudy.
Oh, that's a story from so long ago, and this guy was irredeemable. But he said, "I love you, I love you, I love you." He looked as though he was about to kill her. I was ready to jump in. Yeah, so that's how you say it.
How you say
my,
it?
my
You're
story
telling me
would be
what I was doing wrong.
yeah. My story would be a little bit more gentle and a little different because after I came out of corporate life and went to the university, I had some really mediocre, if not bad bosses at my previous place of employment, and a couple of excellent ones. And I learned more from the bad ones than I did from the excellent ones. And I took that when I went to the university. And there I was greeted with I should say, skeptical, if not hostile environment. And by announcing my intent in ways that did not scare them, I had them eaten out of my hand in no time flat. And when I left, they were all very sad to see me go. And that was a bit of a success story where I turned something that could have been negative into something rather positive if I pat myself on the shoulder.
Well, and bring out the best in them by doing so. You
Yeah,
made the effort on
exactly.
yourself,
Yes.
Exactly.
you know, and it comes back to the idea of polishing the diamonds, right? So,
Yep.
you know, being able to do so in a way that they can hear it, the way they can accept it, the way they can.
And somebody needed, and some of them needed some polishing, tell me.
Mhm.
Jeff, I can hear you contemplating.
I see a lot of people that have been in and out of my life, a lot of diamonds in the rough,
Mhm.
from working security in school where I've had to drag kids to the dean and later became friends with them because I just didn't and kept talking to them. And and you find there's an inner goodness that you didn't think was even there. Of course, I was wondering about some of the psych patients I've dealt with. They've can't find that diamond. You know what I mean? Because they're just
Yeah, yeah.
it's a disease. Yeah.
So let's play with that for just a second, right? Because obviously, you know, there's a few people in the room who have dealt with psych patients and things. When my father was suffering with Alzheimer's, and he was at a stage where he was very angry because he knew he was losing it, but had no control of that, and that brought up a lot of pent up frustration, and it was tough growing, right? So how do I polish the diamond? How do I find the gold? How do I dig deeper in that kind of situation?
Yeah, it's tough.
When there are still things that can be done by the person, like your father, if those are highlighted, sometimes the other things sort of fade because memory isn't wonderful. So if things that can be done are begun, it can sometimes take the place of the other.
So an example of that, when I worked in the senior care industry,
Mhm.
and tends to be filled with more women than men because they live longer.
Mhm.
And one of the activities on the dementia unit would oftentimes be there would be a laundry room with towels and things
Yep.
to be folded.
Yep.
And women would gravitate to there
Mhm.
to do something constructive,
Mhm.
feel good about it,
Yep.
and then go on. And of course, as soon as they had left, the staff would go in and dump everything back into the unfolded pile so that
Right.
the next person could have a successful experience.
We also use pie crust and bread dough. And you can knead bread dough for a long time. And
Yeah,
if necessary, you can actually bake it, but you don't have to get to that stage. You can just
right,
do the motion.
right. And it brings the person some area of feeling success
Mhm.
because all of us, that's what we want to do. We want to do something good in the world,
Mhm.
do something constructive. We want to feel useful. We want to feel productive and useful.
Yep.
I think that's the bottom line is that, you know, when caring for someone with psych issues or other challenges, if it comes down to how can I help that person be successful in something?
Mhm.
And that's no different when we turn to the rest of us. The top A student, I had a student in Australia, I had a student who had no concept of how to organize themselves. Had no concept, right? Wasn't the person wasn't dumb, but just was totally, remember Pigpen in the cartoons, right?
Oh, yeah.
Nice person, but like had no concept of, So I told this kid, listen, when recess comes, why don't you stay in and I'm going to help you. I'm going to teach you how to organize your desk. And we'll find out a support system or a point system or something to help you, encourage you to keep your desk organized, because then when you go look for something, it'll be where you know it is. And it'll help you be successful. And he was really excited about this. And he was excited about the one-on-one attention. He was excited about learning something that could be useful for him. But what threw me for the loop was the straight A kid next to him who said, hey, can I stay and learn as well? And I was thinking, you don't need to. Your desk is. And I asked him, I said, why? He said, well, I know it's organized, but I don't know the logic behind it. I don't know why I do how they do that. And he wanted to understand on a deeper level. So here was two kids opposite spectrum on the a scale of success in school. Both wanted to learn a skill set that would help them function more easily. So searching for what is it we can do to help the next person be more successful. And we've all studied leadership. We've all done leadership in one format or another. And at the end of the day, what is leadership? It's helping someone else be successful. And I think that goes back to the very beginning of the class. The name of the chapter is to bring closer those who are close. People who already they're good people. How do you help them be even better? How do you help them be even more successful? How do you polish the gem, dig for the diamonds? How do you bring out the best in every single person? And that was one of the positive traits that Rebbe had, was to always bring out something good and some positive trait in each person. I'll end with one quick last joke. There's a bar mitzvah boy who came to the Rebbe for blessings for his bar mitzvah, and the Rebbe started to test him and on the laws of tefillin, right? And the Rebbe had said, so a person who's right-handed puts on tefillin, and the boy finished, said on the left hand. And the Rebbe said, a person who's left-handed puts on the right arm. The boy finishes, he puts on the right arm. The Rebbe says, what if a person only has one arm? And the kid says, then he gets help, but he puts tefillin on the arm that's left. And the Rebbe said, what about a person who Rahman Litzlan, God forbid, has no arms? And the kid says, he still has the tefillin shel rosh, the one that goes on the head. And the Rebbe said, what if the person doesn't have a head? And the boy looked at the Rebbe and said, he doesn't need to put on tefillin.
Either that or he's a
It
politician.
wouldn't do any good.
And the Rebbe smiled, but it was like the kid was like, the Rebbe just made a joke with me.
It's like
He
I said,
shared a
yes,
joke.
to help me putting backers.
And sometimes when you have, I'm going to tell another story. I was at a conference, Illinois Wing Conference, right? And I probably told the story before, but there's a now I'm going to try. Hang on.